What's up, lovers of whiskey and watchers of YouTube? I'm the Malt activist, and can you tell me what these 5 whiskeys have in common? The Glenmorangie Signet, the Arran cask, the Bothy, Compass Box Hedonism, Kavalan Solist Vinho Barrique, and the Amrut Intermediate Sherry. Right? I will tell you, these 5 whiskeys are some of the most uniquely constructed whiskeys you will find on the market, right? Whether it's the maturation, whether it's the distillation, whether it's the drinking experience, they're all unique in their own way and the most creatively constructed whiskeys. But they do have one thing in common. You know what that is? They're absolutely fucking delicious. Let's find out why. Before we deep dive into what makes these 5 whiskeys unique and delicious, I just want to give a big shout out to my first time viewers. Thank you for tuning into this channel. I hope you like this content. If you like anything that is whiskey related, whiskey geekdom, whiskey nerd fest, whatever you want to call it, then I think this is the channel for you. Please consider liking this video or sharing this video, or better yet, subscribing and becoming part of the Malt activist community. To everyone who is a returning viewer, thank you for keeping your standards so low. It is highly appreciated. All right, let's deep dive. So the idea for this video came about when I was reviewing the Ardbeg Eureka, and basically what that does is it has a very sort of unique roasting the malt barley process, giving it a unique flavor profile, which I found very interesting. And I was like, let me see how many other whiskeys I can find that sort of broke away from the norm, that pushed the envelope and said, you know what, we're not satisfied with doing things the way they're being done on a regular basis. We want to explore, we want to broaden our horizons and experiment and see what's up. So I came across these 5 whiskeys that I have personally tried, which I love, right? And each one has a very, very unique way of it being constructed. Like the master distiller or the whiskey maker must have been on something when they said, you know what, I have a great idea for this next whiskey. And so with that, I collected 5 whiskeys, which I've personally tasted, which are absolutely delicious, and which to all whiskey geeks and nerds out there, you will find very, very interesting because of the way it's been constructed. Okay, let's get down to it. So our first whiskey on the list is the Glenmorangie Signet. Now, for those of you who watched my Ardbeg Eureka review, know why I included this whiskey in this episode, right? And the idea was that I wanted to identify why this whiskey stands out. And I remember the time when I had the Glenmorangie Signet for the very, very first time. It was at a friend's house. He had brought it out. It's an expensive whiskey. It's about, you know, if you're lucky, you can find it for about 200 pounds, but I've seen the price go up to like almost 300, 350 pounds somewhere as well. So if you're lucky, you can still find it for about 200 pounds. But I remember drinking that whiskey and thinking, whoa, this is tiramisu in a glass. This is roasted coffee beans in a glass, which is not really unusual. You do find roasted coffee beans in a glass, but you know what I mean, right? And I tasted it. It was absolutely scrumptious, so delicious. And I was like, whoa, what is this whiskey? And I never really bothered to find out why that whiskey tasted the way it did until many, many years later. And then it hit me. I was like, whoa. And when I found out, I was like, that is super creative, man. That is super creative. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the reason the Glenmorangie Signet stands out from its other Glenmorangie cousins is the fact that it uses roasted malt or chocolate malt as it's called, right? Now, basically what I mean by that is there's regular malted barley or regular malt, which is just kilned in the normal way, which is fine. But then you have this highly roasted malt, also known as chocolate malt, because of the color. And the reason it becomes that color is because the kiln or the oven in which the barley is being dried or being roasted is cranked up super, super high, cranked up to about 200 degrees Celsius. And what that does is that super, super roasts the barley, and it creates this really unusual flavor profile, which is like roasted coffee beans, burnt caramel, dark bitter chocolate, right? And that is a massive flavor profile. And if you don't know where else this barley is used, let me tell you something. It's used in porters and stouts, right? So that black ale that you see is made from chocolate malt barley, essentially. Now imagine using that recipe to create a whiskey. So well done, Mr. Bill Lumsden, for, I don't know, eating mushrooms that day and thinking, this would be a great idea for a whiskey. Anyway, kudos to him. He decided to do that and basically gave birth, not literally speaking, just figuratively speaking. It would be quite unusual for him to give birth to a bottle of whiskey. Please remove that image from your head, you dirty bastards. Anyway, so what he did was he took a certain percentage. Somebody says it's 40%, somebody says it's 25%. I'm not sure. I think he's keeping it a secret. Keep it a secret. I'm fine with that. But what he did was he used a certain percentage, let's say 25%. He used 25%, or let's say 40%. I don't care, whatever. That percentage barley mixed with regular barley, right? Malted barley. So roasted barley plus regular malted barley created a distillate out of that, right? And then this is what a little birdie told me when I was at a Glenmorangie tasting. And when I say birdie, I mean one of the brand ambassadors. He told me this. I don't know how far it's true because I tried to sort of validate this, trying to do my research on the internet, couldn't find anything. But this is what he told me, and I have no idea and I have no ways to corroborate it, but it is what it is, right? So he told me that this distillate of these two different malted barleys is put in wine casks for about a couple of years, and then after a couple of years it's put in a blending cask or a blending vat, or I don't know, some blending vessel where the distillate from the different casks marries, and then that distillate, right, or that liquid is then put in 3 different casks. In our case, it's ex-bourbon, Oloroso sherry, and virgin oak, right? It's put in those 3 casks and then left to mature and then blended one more time to create the Glenmorangie Signet, which is a pretty insane way of doing things, right? Making whiskeys is already hard, but when you add that extra layer of complexity to it just from an operational perspective, I'm sure the distillery guys were like, dude, man, we already have too much fucking work on our hands. You're making us do this. But you know what? The experiment succeeded. It's become a bit of a cult classic, the Glenmorangie Signet. There's rumors that when the first edition came out, it had whiskeys that were like 30 years old. Of course, it is an on-age statement, so it is what it is. Yeah, and then essentially what they did was they married all these 3 different casks, the virgin oak, the Oloroso, and the bourbon in varying quantities. I do not know the ratio or the recipe, but together it formed the Glenmorangie Signet. Now, let me tell you something. I'm not normally a huge proponent of NAS whiskeys, to be honest, but let me tell you something. This one kinda is pretty darn good, if you know what I mean, right? And I have a sweet tooth, so the sweetness of that whiskey comes out. I'm a sucker for tiramisu, and the tiramisu comes out really strong, which I really like. So yeah, very well constructed whiskey. I love everything about it except the price. I think the pricing is insanely high. The bottle looks amazing. They have a new one out. It's called the Glenmorangie Signet Reserve, which I believe there is an additional maturation from PX sherry casks in there as well, but that's not the whiskey we're talking about. We're talking about the OG Glenmorangie Signet, the one that blew my mind, the one that sort of opened the door for whiskeys like the Ardbeg Eureka and Ardbeg Ardcore, which also use chocolate malt. So very interesting that. From a flavor profile perspective, you've guessed it, we're talking coffee, we're talking chocolate, we're talking tiramisu, we're talking dark fruits, we're talking plums, we're talking caramel, salted caramel, and it's just absolutely amazing. I really love it, but the reason I do love it more than anything else, not just from a taste perspective, is the fact that there was this this level of stupidity that went into making this whiskey. Well, stupidity and genius can be very easily interchanged. So I think it started off as stupidity and then turned into a moment of genius, in my opinion. And the Glenmorangie Signet is just that, an absolutely cracker of a dram made in a way which is like, whoa, what were you thinking? So yeah, if you have the money, go and buy this whiskey. Again, like I said, 200 plus pounds, somewhere 300, 350 pounds is a lot of money to pay for any whiskey whatsoever. But hey man, if the curiosity got the better of you and your wallet, then I don't think it's a bad buy. But that's just my opinion. I'm just bringing to you facts. You guys decide how you want to act on it. Yeah, Glenmorangie Signet, roasted chocolate malt, 3 different casks, blended, reblended. Awesome. Right, so the next whiskey I want to talk to you about is the Arran, the Bothy quarter cask. Right now, if you've watched some of my videos, you know that I'm very, very partial to a good Arran, especially if it's at cask strength, especially if it's matured in bourbon barrels. Oh, that's a good whiskey. And Arran makes a fantastic dram, and the quarter cask or the Bothy is no exception. I remember drinking it for the first time, and I was like, "Whoa, that is awesome!" Right? So I'll tell you how it's made. Number one, it's made from 100% unpeated barley. Okay, it has then a very, very long fermentation, roughly about 65, 70 hours, right? It's distilled using sort of these tall stills, which brings the fruit forward, and then what you get is a pristine liquid, pristine distillate that has been first matured in bourbon barrels for a while, and then finished off, mind you, finished off for about 18 months to 24 months in quarter casks. Now, this may not seem that unusual to you, because I feel a lot of distilleries are kind of now finishing off their whiskeys in quarter casks as well. But that was the first time I came across a whiskey that was doing that, and that was the Arran, the Bothy quarter cask. Now, please, just a caveat and a little note asterisk at the bottom. I'm not saying that these distilleries were the first ever in the world to do this. I'm just saying I discovered this type of whiskey making with these expressions, right? So I am not claiming that I know exactly who was the first one to do this and they revolutionized the whiskey industry. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I found out about this for the first time when I drank this whiskey. So the Arran, the Bothy quarter cask was one of my favorite whiskeys for the longest time, and when I found out how it was matured, that was the first time I saw that a whiskey had been finished off in quarter cask, and I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. And if you know me, you know I am a sucker for a well-made bourbon matured whiskey served at cask strength, and of course giving that quarter cask finish, which is a much smaller cask, and the interaction between the wood and the liquid is that much more intense. That meant amplifying the existing flavors that were sitting in the whiskey. So we're talking vanilla, butterscotch, coconut, hints of banana, very, very fruit forward, just a very, very tasty, delicious dram, and you know, served at a very nice 55.7%. Now, I'm not saying all of them are served at 55.7%. The bottle that I had was served at 55.7%, which is a great. Why did I sound like Tony the Tiger? Great. Which is a great ABV to serve all your whiskeys at, because that means if I want to, you know, dampen it down, temper it a little bit with a couple of drops of water, I can do that as well. Or just, you know, be super macho and drink it the way it was meant to be. So yeah, the Bothy Arran quarter cask. I think you should try and get your hands on it. It's a damn good dram. Right, so the next whiskey I have on my hands is the Compass Box Hedonism. That's right, the brainchild of what I think is a whiskey genius, Mr. John Glaser, the man behind Compass Box. This is a 100% grain whiskey, right? Now, I'm not saying, please, that this is the first grain whiskey to ever do something like this, but I'm enamored by this whiskey because it brought grain to me for the first time. And I was like, whoa, so grain can be trendy too? You know, and that's what they did. They made grain trendy with the hedonism. Basically what they did was they got, grain distillate from Cameron Bridge, Port Dundas, North British, these all grain distilleries, and expertly blended this grain whiskeys together and matured it in first fill bourbon barrels. Well, majority of them were first fill bourbon barrels, so there was first fill and refill, but there was a very, very high percentage of first fill bourbon barrels in that recipe. And the result, and bottled at about 43 to 46% depending on the batch, and the result was this, first of all, very, very sweet whiskey, distilled of course in column stills, not pot stills, but a very, very sweet whiskey, extremely sweet. Lots and lots and lots of vanilla, lots and lots of coconut and butterscotch, you know, very, very bourbon forward, but the sweetness of the grain, which is, you know, the base is wheat or maize, depending on the recipe for that time. Very, very sweet, extremely estery, right? So quite floral as well, quite sort of light in its delivery. Very, very easy drinking whiskey, as most grain whiskeys are. And I think, you know, grain whiskeys have a bad rap where they're just either considered fillers, or they're just considered, you know, they don't have enough character for someone to drink, or have an enjoyable drinking experience because, what, they're just grain whiskeys. No, man. And I think that's the genius of John Glaser, because he's like, let me take something that there's a preconceived notion about that people think is shit, and I will turn it into something that people will go, whoa, I didn't realize you could do that with something like this. And I think that's where the genius of Mr. John Glaser lies, is presenting us with, you know, the unusual, the never before seen. No, not never before seen, but you know what I mean. Yeah, great whiskey, the hedonism, beautiful labeling as always with Compass Box, and I remember drinking it and thinking, yeah, I can get behind this. And I think that kind of opened the door for me to go and try some more grain whiskeys, you know, rather than me just shutting it out and saying, nah, man, they're just for blends, or who gives a shit about grain whiskeys? No, please do give a shit about grain whiskeys and go find yourself a Compass Box Hedonism. I promise you, you will like it. This next whiskey on my list was one of my favorite whiskeys in the whole world for the very, very longest time. I'm talking about the Amrut Intermediate Sherry, which is a funny name, right? I remember drinking this whiskey long time ago when it first came out. I'm talking batch 1, batch 2, right? I think they're up to batch 3,600,000, whatever. No, they're up to batch like maybe 15, 16. Yeah, but I remember getting my hands on batch 1, batch 2, which were, just diamonds in the rough. You know what I'm saying? Just so good, right? And I remember thinking, whoa, first of all, Indian whiskey, it's called Intermediate Sherry. What does that even mean? I don't even know what Intermediate Sherry means. But then, you know, and this is back when I was just drink it and not care about, you know, the pedigree of that whiskey or the history behind the whiskey. I would just drink it for what it is. But then when I did my research, I was like, whoa, that is very interesting, because this whiskey, first of all, made in India from 100% Indian malted barley, has a triple maturation. Very interesting, and I'll explain to you why. It was first matured in bourbon barrels, recast into sherry casks, and then recast again back into bourbon barrels. Hence the name Intermediate Sherry. That's right. That's why this whiskey is called Intermediate Sherry, because bourbon on either side, in the middle, sherry. And one of the people behind this is my good friend Ashok Chokalingam, who at that time was a brand ambassador and is now the master distiller for Amrut Whiskies. And what an interesting concept, right? To say, okay, you know, this is what we're going to do. We're not just going to blend a couple of bourbon barrels with a sherry cask. No. We're going to distill it in bourbon. Then we're going to take it out and put it in Oloroso sherry casks. And then again, we're going to go take it out and put it in bourbon barrels. And then we'll see. And then we'll see what happens, which is insane to do that. Again, so much hard work. And you know the best part? Bottled at 57%. No fucking around. This is what I love about Amrut whiskeys. High strength whiskeys, super big on flavors. Some people might say, oh, because they're young whiskeys, they have to come in at high strength. I say, so be it. You know what? It's the drinking pleasure that counts. And the intermediate sherry, I'm talking about the earlier batches. It was just absolutely sublime. The mouthfeel, it was like treacle, just sweet treacle, so beautiful. And very, very different approach to whiskey making, which resulted in a very, very different drinking experience, flavor profile. Of course, you know, the bourbon gives you the sweetness, the sherry gives you the figs and the dryness and the beautiful tannins, and then again those get kind of mellowed out and balanced out once it hits the bourbon barrel again. So man, crazy triple cask maturation, which nobody would have thought of, and it's there in the name, the intermediate sherry. And my last whiskey on the list, and by no means the least, is the Kavalan Solist Vinho Barrique. Now, I am a massive fan of A, Kavalan, and B, of the Solist series, because the Solist series, first of all, served at cask strength, massively high strength whiskeys, and just the drinking experience, just so full, just so exploding with flavors. I remember drinking my first Kavalan Solist. It was a single cask and just blew me away. It was like drinking, it was like drinking bourbon. It was like drinking some really high strength bourbon. You could have fooled me, by the way, and it was that good. And the Vinho Barrique, right, is a great example once again of an outlier distillery. At that time, an outlier distillery. Kavalan is very, very mainstream now, but an outlier distillery saying, let us try and do something different to set us apart from the mainstream crowd. And so the Vinho Barrique is matured in both red and white wine casks, which is kind of unheard of. So red wine, yes, sure. White wine? Very unusual. And then married together. So, you know, very interesting experiment, which resulted in an absolutely fantastic whiskey. You know, it has this really cool bouquet of flavors like coconut and mango spice, but then the red wine gives it, you know, a bit of tannins and that fig and that jam quality, and just together, you know, blended together, it makes for an absolutely wonderful drinking experience. And I think that it was these bold statements by Kavalan at that time that sort of, you know, set them apart, and they said, you know what, we're going to put our whiskeys out there. We're not going to shy away from being bold and experimental and, you know, a bit crazy, if you ask me. And I think that's exactly what the Vinho Barrique exemplifies, is that attitude, because, you know, it's such a huge risk, you know. And I think at that time, as a distillery from Taiwan, which is trying to break into the sort of luxury single malt market, for them to come out and say, you know, we're going to break away from the norm and do something interesting. And, you know, the Vinho Barrique is a great example of that. Blending white and red wine matured whiskey together and creating something that is quite an anomaly. I love it. So yeah, get your hands on it. Again, served at a very high strength of about 57 to 59% ABV, depending on the batch. But yeah, one of the great examples of a unique whiskey making. And, you know, get your hands on it, find it, drink it, buy it, whatever it is. I don't know if you can still get it though. I hope you get it. Okay, how does that sound? So there we go. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that. Like I said, my caveat is these were the whiskeys that I first encountered that opened my eyes to this type of maturation. I am under no circumstances saying that they were the first ones to do it, even if they might have been, I don't know, you know, and that they revolutionized the industry. No, I'm just saying they revolutionized my thinking and my opinion of these whiskeys. So yeah, I hope this list helped you. I hope, you know, if you find some of these, or if you've already drunk some of these, please pop it in the comment below. Let me know if you agree or disagree. It would be great to have a conversation. I've already been rambling on for too long. I'm the Malt Activist. Until next time, peace.